Welcome everyone. I definitely see some new faces and some old faces as well. Excited to have you all. This is our last event or panel event of the year. It's our Ideas for Sea Change. We have with us today Keene Haywood from University of Miami Erasmus, as well as Dalton Hesley from Rescue A Reef and University of Miami as well. I'm going to have them both introduce themselves in a second, but I just wanted to give a quick kind of introduction to what our view of citizen science is and why it's such a critical thing to seaworthy's mission as well. We're really focused on this, radical inclusion and interdisciplinary efforts for ocean science and exploration and conservation and everything to really promote regeneration for the oceans. And, as you'll hear from both of them, there's been some really great work done both by them and by colleagues of theirs in this space. And we're really excited to explore that and promote that as a citizen science as a real tool for this. So with that, Keene, do you want to introduce yourself, talk a little bit about your background, and then Dalton will go to you.
Okay, sure. Yeah, I'm Keene Haywood. Nice to see everybody here, and thanks for the invitation to be part of this. It's been great having Daniel as a student, and see a few other students here as well. And so my background is I have a PhD in geography from the University of Texas at Austin. My undergraduate degree is in anthropology from the University of Miami, and I have a master's degree from the University of Miami Erasmus, and what used to be called Marine Affairs. And I also have an MFA, Master of Fine Arts in Science and Natural History Filmmaking. And I've kind of done a lot of different things. My career has been a very winding path to this point. So I've worked in media production, worked in a little bit in the tech industry and conservation, worked for the Nature Conservancy, I worked for National Geographic, worked for the New Media Consortium, which was a consortium of universities and tech companies using technology for education purposes and research purposes. And worked at the University of Texas at Austin. That's where I got my PhD. Yeah, so it's been a winding road. But I guess in terms of citizen science, I got involved initially at National Geographic. The first BioBlitz that was a partnership between Geographic and the National Park Service wasn't the first BioBlitz, but it was the first one between Geographic and National Park Service. That was back in 2006 or 7, I guess. And we did Rock Creek Park. And that was the first time I really started to think about citizen science and what it kind of meant in the context of a BioBlitz. And from there, I've just been involved in a number of BioBlitzes, the City Nature Challenges here in Miami, and worked with a number of other people on folks who are designing or working with citizen science projects in various capacities. So anyway, it's good to be here, but it's been a kind of a winding road to this point.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for coming. We're excited to have you, Keene. Dalton, you want to talk about your background a little bit?
Yeah, of course. I don't have quite as glowing a resume as Keene, but I have some local experience. So I have a master's of professional science degree from the University of Miami's Rosenstiel School, where I kind of focused on tropical marine ecology and citizen science. But I am continuing my education currently and for a master's in science education, because so much of my work is interdisciplinary, where I look at ocean conservation, active restoration or regeneration, and then how that connects to communities and public participation. So currently my role is as a senior research associate in Dr. Diego Lehrman's lab at the University of Miami's Rosenstiel School, where we specialize in benthic ecology and coral reef restoration. But I also manage our research lab's citizen science program, which is called Rescue A Reef. And so my master's thesis that Keene actually helped to advise was on how to develop a citizen science program out of coral reef restoration. And it was because the field was somewhat booming at that time, coral reef restoration. And so there was great advances in its applications. And so Dr. Lehrman designed the program to support our research and restoration while still raising awareness and public support of coral conservation and obviously their restoration. And so I've been in that role for the past 5 years and am very fortunate to still be managing our Rescue Reef program that's had a lot of success in the area. So I'm just looking forward to talking a little bit more about my personal experience with citizen science and coral reef restoration, and the broader implications of the field. So thank you all for tuning in and for having me.
We're thrilled to have you as well, Dalton. And I think as an engineer, part of actually I'm getting my master's as Keene mentioned at University of Miami in exploration science. And as an engineer, for me, I always kind of look at things as the science and the applications. And literally, I'm not getting an engineering degree; I'm getting an exploration science degree because I'm tailoring the application of my scientific background. And I think it's an interesting kind of back and forth between the two of you because I think Keene, you have such a broad experience in the citizen science realm, and Dalton, you really nailed down that application for reef. So I'm excited to explore both sides with you guys. So Keene, to start off, I have a question. Well, it's for both of you, but we'll start with you. What does citizen science mean to you?
Well, I think citizen science means to me it's a process to include people outside the formal scientific realm in the process of scientific inquiry and investigation, so that they can explore their own questions, their own curiosity, and feel like they can contribute and be a part of scientific knowledge, pursuits, and help them to empower them to basically be able to deal with local problems that might be in their area that they feel like they could contribute to helping solve, or just to also just empower themselves to kind of understand their world a little bit better. And so I guess I feel like it's a way of thinking about the scientific world where they can include more people than just the formal scientists.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just the accessibility part of making science accessible, right, to people who aren't necessarily scientists is, to me, part of what we're going for as well, right? As we get, one great example I can just say is one of the leading aquaculture producers for the U.S., Campeche Farms. They were at a conference I was at last year and just actively recruiting engineers. Not ocean scientists, not marine biologists. And so it really is, how do we make these areas of science accessible to more than just the people we'd expect them to be. Dalton, same question for you. What does citizen science mean to you?
I agree wholeheartedly with Keene. So to me, citizen science is opportunity. It's an opportunity for researchers to better connect with their community, to advance their research projects. A lot of times these endeavors aren't even feasible without citizen scientists. And it's an opportunity to learn about what people consider to be valuable or important, because there's clearly a disconnect. So the same is true in the inverse, where for community members, it's an opportunity to learn more about a specific topic, to actually play a role, to become invested in it, and then have a stake in that project, that initiative, because we live in an era where there is some skepticism of science, which I think is just because of the inaccessibility. But there are so many citizen science projects that are fun, informational, and empowering, where you can actually take ownership and have influence on your surroundings, your environment. And so, like I said, it's an opportunity for science and society to bridge that gap, to advance some cause. And like Keene mentioned, it's a way to make it more accessible and increase equity in a number of different ways.
Great points, and I just love to kind of hammer home to some of these key areas that just really, I didn't really know what citizen science was before this semester in your class, Keene. So it's just, making these opportunities even known is half the battle.
Yeah, I think if I could just add, I think one thing people don't quite realize is that the professional scientist is a relatively new animal. I mean, we haven't really had professional scientists. It's really been in the 20th century that sort of came into its own. And after World War II, we sort of industrialized science, and it kind of became this sort of untouchable realm where you're like, prior to that, you had a lot of scientists like Darwin, for instance, wasn't a formal scientist. He was an amateur naturalist. And so you didn't, you know, you either had patrons that were supporting these people, but you didn't have a professional science world. So we've sort of built this world up largely since World War II, but a little bit before that. And so it kind of divided those people from the rest of the population. So they just sort of were in universities or research labs, and they weren't really engaging in direct ways with people outside of those areas. And so people kind of, you know, you get the term ivory tower, and people like, oh, the scientist in the lab coat. And science, if you look at the word itself, doesn't mean like someone with a highly specialized degree. It just means to know something, you know, and everybody wants to know about things. And so now with the technologies that we have and the platforms and the accessibility with a lot of things, we can democratize that so people don't feel like they're, you know, excluded or that they can't contribute because they don't, you know, they're not smart enough. You say science and people immediately think, oh God, you know, calculus and crazy, chemistry experiments. So it gives people an opportunity to say, hey, yeah, I can do this. I'm capable of doing this, and I can have a real impact with it. I don't have to be in a lab somewhere and with a lot of specialized degrees. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's, you know, it also just, it's intimidating, right? To have to think you have to have all these these degrees and, you know, letters after your name, when the reality is we need boots on the ground and people to just be willing to get their hands dirty. So I'm going to move on to our next question, and Dalton, we'll start with you. This is just diving into you guys' more specific experiences. How have you led or been a part of citizen science efforts?
Yeah, it's a cool question. And for me, it was really just, you know, fortuitous timing, because as I was doing my master's studies at the Rosenstiel School, was right about the same time that Dr. Lerman was developing this Rescue A Reef citizen science program. And so I'd always known what citizen science was and had, you know, appreciated and valued the field, but I hadn't had much exposure or experience myself. So it was a really great opportunity, because personally, I'd always been drawn to what connects communities to natural resources and services, as well as how they can work together, how they're related. And so I was, you know, fascinated with the field of coral restoration, and then the idea of having it be a project that the general public could participate in was really, really exciting. And so early on, there was some heavy lifting where, you know, we had to try and connect with the Miami community and let them know what the heck coral restoration was, you know, how that meant they could participate. So initially, we primarily were only working with avid recreational scuba divers, because they were the most familiar, they had the most interest in trying it out. But as word of mouth, you know, took off, we had a lot of people that were refreshing their scuba certification because they really wanted to come out with us. They kind of lost interest in scuba diving, but this was a new, exciting opportunity. We adapted our techniques so that snorkelers could come on the boat as well, because we didn't want our citizen science program to be specific to the scuba diving community. We wanted as many different people that were interested and motivated to be able to come and join it. And then Keene helped immensely in how to develop a program that's sustainable. You know, what are you trying to accomplish? What are you trying to measure? What do you hope your impact is? And so each year we try and improve our program so that it's available and accessible to as many different people, that we're evaluating our activities to ensure that, you know, we're being responsible, we're reaching outcomes, driving impact, both onshore and offshore. So it's been really special for me. And I've had the pleasure of diving deeper into the world of citizen science, which again, wasn't what brought me down here in the first place, but it's such an exciting field. And I really believe that citizen science could be what helps us reach, you know, long-term sustainability when it comes to our environment and natural resources.
Absolutely. Keene, you want to build off that?
Yeah, so I think I was trying to think here. I guess you know, being part of all these different these different projects or these different citizen science efforts, it's been really good to just see the diversity of people that are involved, and I think it also makes you realize the passion that people have for things. I've just been amazed by the level of commitment and drive that a lot of these people have to go out and find and discover things. And they really they're really driven by it. I mean, it's amazing, and it's great to be around. And you just realize that we share kind of a common ground in terms of our natural human capacity to be curious. And when you bring this community together, it really it really makes you really feel like you're making a difference. You really feel like you're having an impact. And I'd say that's probably the neatest thing that happens. Is just the community gets built that gets built around these projects. And friendships are built, professional relationships are built, and then people are kind of discovering the world together and are discovering how to solve a problem together. And titles fall away, your background falls away, you get these incredible amateur naturalists that I hate to sort of use the word amateur, but they have other jobs that they do, but they're really good at certain areas that they've just gotten really interested in. And so it's really cool to just see that when you're out, you go out on one of these projects and you see people show up and you're like, oh wow, there's this really diverse group of people who are really interested in these things. So.
Yeah, and I think there's just this beauty in building diversity for the sciences, and not just for the sake of diversity, right? But actually in getting different takes on problems. People can't, if everyone came from the same background or approached the problem, we'd never have any different takes on it. And so it really takes people of all different, socioeconomic backgrounds and cultures to actually look at science on different levels and different applications. So I think it just reinforces it in so many different ways. The next question I have, and Keene, we'll start with you, is how can citizen science, actually this builds right off of it, how can citizen science be used to bring more people into the sciences?
Well, I think it provides an opening for them to kind of contribute and be part of something that involves the scientific work. So I think now people can. I think this is changing quite a bit, but it used to be, again, like I was saying, people just didn't think the science world was very approachable, that you sort of like, oh, you kind of do your thing off in the lab or wherever. But now, you can go online and search for projects and you find ways to contribute. And a lot of times it can start with kids because, they might be looking for something for, a parent might be looking for something for their kids to do or something like that. Or or an adult might be looking to kind of expand their horizons. Like Dalton was saying, maybe they're tired of diving. So was there something different they could be doing that could reignite that interest? And so I think now, it's relatively easy to find opportunities, and there's these great platforms that have been developed in the last several years that allow people to find projects and to, participate relatively easily, whether it's, I only have time to sit in front of my computer and do things, or I actually want to go out and get on the ground and do something. You can kind of have that whole spectrum is available to people now. So so I think it's relatively easy. You just have to have the curiosity and and a little bit of time. And I think the opportunities are definitely there now. It used to be a lot harder to find, but now it's a lot easier to get involved, and you can kind of decide how involved you want to get. There's an example that's on the platform Zooniverse, the online citizen science platform. A number of people, I say a number, I think of two people that were just regular contributors. And there was one who she turned out to get hired by Zooniverse. She was, I'm not sure what she did before, but she had some good programming. She was a good database programmer, and she ended up getting a job with them and working with them. And then there was another one that was actually mentioned in our class. There's a woman, a teacher in I believe in Holland, and she discovered something, an astronomical feature that everyone had missed. All the professional astronomers had missed it. All the other volunteers had missed it, but she noticed this one thing that they went back to check and look, and they're like, oh, wow, this is actually a new astronomical, phenomenon. And body, I think it was. And so they started to look for this thing, and they named it after her. They named the phenomenon after her. And she was a school teacher who was just kind of doing this on her free time. She was really interested and curious in astronomy. And sometimes I think the door opens to citizen science for new eyes. You come in, and sometimes, not being a specialist, you're so trained to look at things in a certain way that with a citizen scientist coming in and looking at things for the first time, they might be like, wow, what's that? And you've been staring at that thing for years and you never really questioned what it was. And they're like, what is that thing over there in that corner of that picture? Or what is that there? And you're like, oh, wow, that's new. we missed it. So I think that's one thing that really, people can bring to the table, just a new eyes and a new enthusiasm. Because, even if you work with the same data or the same subject matter for years at a time, you do get a little, fuzzy brained with it. You're kind of like, oh yeah, I'm used to looking at this, but not in a new way. So, so I think it's easy for people to find things now to contribute to and get involved with, and then they can bring a new set of eyes to the table.
Awesome. Dalton, you want to answer the question as well?
Yeah, of course. So I think there's been somewhat of a pivot or an expansion in the field of citizen science in my albeit short time, where traditionally citizen science was largely focused on data collection. So you were talking about projects where researchers or scientists needed assistance to cast a wider net, collect more data. Some of the really big projects initially were with like water quality or bird watching. But I feel like the field of citizen science has expanded to think more about social change and how to work with the general public to raise awareness, encourage advocacy, stewardship, and then promote better policy and management. And so because of that, I think that there are so many more citizen science programs because they realize it's a vehicle or a platform to drive change and to actually see the needle move. With coral restoration being an example, where we obviously love having a number of individuals on the boat with us to meet our scientists, to actually help us, restore local coral reefs and help plant threatened coral species, which is clearly driving population recovery, habitat recovery. But we don't actually consider that to be the stressor or the driver of our program. We consider the value of our program to be in that connection with people, to actually be able to work alongside of them. As Keene brilliantly mentioned, you learn a lot from those individuals. They help reshape what you do with those different perspectives, because then now you have a community. You have a body of individuals who all are working together, are invested in this, want to see progress. So then you're not a single scientist on a soapbox. You're a community of passionate people that can hopefully, do things, voice concerns, and actually see progress in our lifetimes. And so I think that means, whatever your interest is, whether it's butterflies or mangroves or marine debris, like there is definitely a citizen science program out there for you that is fun. It's not just, tallying something on a clipboard. It's fun, especially in Miami. Our program, Rescue A Reef, is somewhat limited in that we obviously have to charter boats and put together scientists and make sure the weather is conducive for these offshore expeditions. For that reason, we highlight all the amazing other citizen science programs here in Miami that are doing really great work, that are still working towards the same vision and mission that we are, healthy, clean, sustainable oceans and coral reefs. So that we try and encourage people to branch out and explore some of those other opportunities, because it seems like once you get your feet wet, no pun intended, you really get enthusiastic and you want to support it in additional ways. And one of the unique things about our program is that we don't necessarily try and identify the most skilled or passionate citizen scientists. We obviously are so grateful to have those individuals, but we want different people on the boat, people that typically wouldn't have that opportunity or that exposure. Because it's going to take a engaged, knowledgeable, civically active community to create change. And so that's, again, why we try and share resources, collaborate with other groups, because we want this to be something that the entire community has the opportunity to participate in, not just the select few.
Yeah, well said. I mean, it is really, I like to say the word democratizing, right? The ability to get involved in science. And It's just as far as right the gravity of issues that we're facing for the ocean specifically, and how we're going to go about doing the science, right? I mean, part of why we started Seaworthy is the public funding to support doing this important science is not there. And so actually, if in some ways citizen science might be the only way that we're actually going to be able to conduct this science and make sure that we're actually monitoring and getting the data that we need to make actionable solutions to the problems we face, from global warming to overfishing and plastic pollution. So there's some real tangible benefit there. I'm seeing we're getting a lot of questions in the chat, so I'm going to combine my fourth and fifth question for you guys into one. And if you only answer half, that's okay. So the questions are: what innovations are further enabling citizen science, or how is citizen science enabling innovation? So kind of either end. Keene, you want to start with this one?
Sure. So what innovations are further enabling citizen science and
or how is citizen science enabling innovation? Either way.
Yeah. Well, I think um, yeah, I think the innovation. I mean, obviously, there's. I think when people say the word innovation, they automatically think of technology, I think that's one area where definitely citizen science has been impacted. We wouldn't be able to do what we're doing now if we didn't have fast internet, wireless cellular networks, if we didn't have obviously the smartphone platforms, if we didn't have cloud computing, if we didn't have open source software, if we didn't have social networks, if we didn't have all these things, citizen science would be look a lot different. In fact, it's existed for a very, very long time, but it would not be this sort of connected phenomenon that's sort of taken off in the last decade or two. It sort of has progressed right along with the progression of smartphone technology and the associated technologies with that. So, but also I think innovation doesn't necessarily have to be technology driven. And I think one thing that's been innovative is that people started out thinking that citizen science was this contributory platform to just collect data, bird sightings, or looking at fall leaves change, phenology, things like that. But then they realized that no, this is really a platform that can be used for social change. It can be used for democratization purposes. It can be used to bring marginalized communities and other folks in urban areas that don't get exposed to natural places. It can open their eyes to a lot of things, and people can realize it's a tool and a platform they can use to really empower them, so they can go to their politicians and say, we need to change this policy, we need to do that. And so citizen science has sort of had to be innovative. It's had innovation in the way that it's being done, so that it's having a more impact on a real impact, not just collecting data for the sake of collecting data to look at patterns of things, which is important, but it's looking at also how we can empower communities and people to enact change and hold people responsible. And I think Flint, Michigan water crisis is the big, huge example, and I mention it a lot in my class. But it really did. It could not have happened without citizen science, and it lit a fire under both the federal and local governments to change water quality policies and procedures. And so yeah, I think people realize, oh yeah, that's a way that's an innovative thing that citizen science can do. But the other thing is, I mean, we're going to see more and more 5G networks, so just the data transfer is going to be faster and faster. I think that the tendency is, well, there's a book written by a scientist named James Glick, or Gleick, I think it's Gleick. Anyway, it's called Faster. It's just about, he's written a lot of good books, but that one is about just how we are everything is incrementally going up. Everything's faster, faster, faster. Processors are a lot faster. We're crunching more data faster. Everything's faster. And there's good and bad to that. It's overtaxing our brains with just too much information coming at us quicker and quicker. But also it's making the ability to crunch a lot of information that people are collecting all over the place and make some sense of that. And artificial intelligence and machine learning and all that are sort of feeding into that, so that more and more like images can be analyzed faster and in more depth and more detail. iNaturalist uses image recognition, artificial intelligence now to identify the common species. The thing that's difficult there is that when you get rare species, the artificial intelligence doesn't know that yet, because the way it works is that it has to have lots and lots of pictures of one thing. So you could have lots and lots of pictures of lionfish. It's going to know what a lionfish is when it sees it. But if you have, some extremely rare fish, there's only one or two pictures of it. It's not going to recognize that. You need a human to really say, yeah, that's a very rare this or that, So, but the AI stuff is going to be, I think, play a role in a lot of this. So yeah, I think, but yeah, everything's just going to get faster and more, efficient, I guess, if you will. How we manage the data and how we manage all these connections with each other online is going to be, it's challenging, but citizen science uses all that stuff. So you have to be able to kind of get your head around it.
Well, and it's funny. I have to add my experience on that one. For Keene's class, I participated in a actual training an AI model for fish identification, which, as an engineer, I thought was really cool. Doing the process was a little simpler than I thought it would be, but at the same time, it really, the point that you mentioned, Keene, as far as humans do have to be the ones to lead the training still, and it can be anyone, right? I didn't need an engineering degree to label fish in an image, but at the same time, it just goes to show that, again, anyone can be part of the process. And then the other side of Internet of Things I like to touch on, one of my favorite examples is basically people doing ocean exploration from their living rooms. It's the Schmidt Ocean Institute. They have like a high-speed link that they have off of their ship. And when they're down with their ROVs, hydrothermal vents and stuff, they're live streaming their explorations, and people are literally taking screenshots. I'm in a Facebook group that's a marine bio group, and you just see people upload screenshots all the time. It's awesome. So I just really, that resonated with me as far as just the high speed connection kind of really revolutionizing things. We have barely even seen what 5G can do. So that's really exciting. Dalton, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, so I can't speak at length about, how innovation has changed citizen science, simply because the field of coral restoration is deliberately low tech, readily available resources, because while we might have, better supplies in Miami, coral decline is happening all around the world. And so our methodologies need to be easily accessible and I guess translatable for any region. But what I can say is that citizen science has really drove innovation because it's made the somewhat siloed sciences very interdisciplinary. Through citizen science, we collaborate with a number of different groups, whether that's coastal engineers or science communicators or anything in between. So there's so much ideas and opportunity that's transferred, and that can be from any individual. We've had so many different types of stakeholders come offshore with us to learn about our coral research, to obviously lend a hand with our coral restoration. And you just start talking about ideas and what they're working on and how that could help drive our mission forward. Collaboration, obviously, being here shows what collaboration is capable of. So I think that citizen science, again, is a platform for learning and sharing ideas and advancing research projects, all while ensuring that we see societal action, that collectively as a population, we realize that these are our resources, each and every one of us. And so their long-term sustainability is ultimately going to come down to us. So I think that citizen scientists really do hold the power. And so when we work alongside them, that's when we're really going to see meaningful change.
And that's a perfect lead into my last question, which, Dalton, I'll start with you. What advice do you have for people looking to get involved in citizen science or science in general and may not have a specific scientific background?
Yeah, my advice is just give it a shot. Honestly, it might seem daunting or like a hurdle in front of you, but it's so easy to get involved. And I promise you that any citizen science project is going to be so eager to have you and work with you. And as I mentioned, a little earlier, I'm pretty confident that whatever you consider to be your hobby or passion or interest, there is a citizen science project in your neighborhood. So I think the chat already mentioned a number of great websites to search for that, like SciStarter, Zooniverse, where thousands of projects are listed. And so one of my favorites is iNaturalist, because if you ever stumble across something you're not sure what it is, you can just take a photo and it tells you, which just goes to show how far technology has come. But it's such a great opportunity for you to learn and meet new people and be a part of a project, and reinvest in our natural resources. So my only advice would just be give it a shot. I think you're going to like it.
Keene, same question for you.
Yeah, no, I think Dalton said it well. I think I was going to say that, yeah, find out what your passion and your curiosity is all about, and there'll be a project for that. I'm almost guaranteed, as Dalton said, there's thousands of projects now, and SciStarter is a great clearinghouse for a lot of those, and Zooniverse is another big clearinghouse for online citizen science projects. And so I think, it's just a matter of saying, hey, I'm curious about this, or I have a lot of experience with this. Well, how can I contribute and do something positive with it? And then, people are kind of looking to connect with other people and build a community. So they're like, well, who else out there is interested in this too? And then you realize, oh, wow, there's all these people doing these things, and they can jump in and contribute. And so I think you just have to say, oh yeah, realize that this exists. And then you can sort of, look for the opportunities and sort of jump in wherever your curiosity or interests, take you with it. So.
Yeah, and if I can add on very briefly, my last piece of advice on that topic is, if there isn't a citizen science program within your field or passion, build one. There's so many groups that are doing really important work, but with just a little additional structure, could be a citizen science program that's actively collecting data and driving research, and then hopefully shaping policy. So for me, that's actually become a personal passion, is to try and get more traditional research labs like our own to consider creating a public program or a citizen science program, because as we've seen, it's really helped us advance our research, acquire different funding opportunities, but most importantly, work with our local community. So people see the issues that coral reefs are experiencing, but then also the tools available for their conservation and restoration. So if there's any aspiring scientists on this, I would say, give that a try as well. Think about trying to enact your own citizen science program to advance the field.
And honestly, just to add to that real quick, what you just mentioned is also very entrepreneurial too. And I mean, part of actually what I think is really cool about citizen science as well is that it's really almost like a prototyping space where people can just put ideas out there, crowdsource them, if you will, right? And really get to flesh them out before before the next step. And at the end of the day, half the battle of getting a good idea is an army of people behind it who believe in it just as much as you do. So with that, I'm going to get to the Q&A. Sierra, are you still there? I was going to have you unmute to ask your question. Sorry. There you go. All right, Sierra, you want to ask your question?
Yeah, for sure. 1 second. I have 2 questions, actually. So the first check-in question I have is, so citizen science has a big effect on policy. What are personal ways you have been able to see policy influenced by citizen science?
I can comment briefly to start. So over the years, we've had hundreds of people join us offshore for our citizen science expeditions, and have reached thousands more through our public outreach events and social media platforms. So we have somewhat of a community, I guess, that follows us, and we have a pretty robust email list. So while we don't really lobby, we at least let people know when there are opportunities for like public comment, or when there's something that will be on the ballot that is related to coral reefs. And so our vision is that by working with us, offshore, keeping in touch, these individuals are more confident to just voice these concerns and talk on these subjects, because a lot of times that can actually be the biggest hurdle, is people feel like they're not knowledgeable enough, or it's not their space to be in some of these meetings. But that's far from the case. And so personally, I think that that would be my example, is that by working with these different groups, you just become more knowledgeable and engaged and in touch. And so then there's more opportunities for you to voice those concerns and values in the policy setting. And so, locally, we have seen some advances in this type of work because of the community that follows us.
Awesome, thank you. Keene, do you have any policies that you've seen come into effect?
I guess working with Geographic and the National Park Service on the BioBlitzes, I think it made the Park Service, I think, a lot more aware of people's active engagement with the parks, in terms of like beyond just sort of recreating spaces, that, hey, people can come and contribute data that can help us manage the parks better and understand what's really here in these BioBlitzes. And so I think that has helped. We had like the head of the National Park Service came a few times and to these events, and there would be local politicians would come and see this. And so I think that they realized that, I can't say specific policies came out of that, but it definitely put it right in front of the face of policymakers. And then I think, here in Miami, Miami Waterkeeper has done a great job of, with their water quality monitoring projects are I think are going to start helping change policy and how government deals with water quality and wastewater and things like that here in Miami, which has been a huge problem related to Biscayne Bay. And it's aging infrastructure, septic tanks are still in use here. There's just a lot of problems. And so they're, Miami Waterkeeper has got a legal team and good scientists on board. And I think they're able to collect data with the help of the public and show the city, hey, here's the problem areas and what do we do to, fix that or enact some sort of, new legislation perhaps. So, as I mentioned in class earlier today, the federal government has formally recognized citizen science. So you can go to citizenscience.gov, and the U.S. government is involved with getting citizen science implemented in federal programs. So that can really help, I think, with going towards policy. And it's now the attention of the higher level policymakers in Washington know about citizen science. Now there's actually a bill that was introduced that's trying to integrate more citizen science into federal projects and things like that. So, yeah.
Awesome. All right. Next question I have is from Natalia. Natalia, you don't want to unmute, right? Or are you okay unmuting?
Oh, it's okay.
Okay.
Hi guys, pleasure just being with you. We have been exchanging a couple of emails at some point of this year, I will say. And I want to ask you, taking into account that the programs developed in US are based mainly in volunteers, what do you recommend to look at to engage communities in coral restoration in countries as Colombia and other countries at the south that has such a different conditions in terms of social and economic indicators?
Yeah, it's a fantastic question. And you hit it on the head, where initially, when our program first got off the ground, it was mostly avid recreational scuba divers. But we've worked pretty hard to transition to individuals who realize that this is their reef resources, this is their coastal communities that need the shoreline protection that reefs provide. So I think that is part of the answer, is to highlight the importance of reef resources, so people realize how valuable they are to these coastal communities. And so there's actually a really good example of a successful coral restoration project or program in the Dominican Republic. Our University of Miami lab and Dr. Learman helped to develop a coral gardening and restoration program in the Dominican Republic that started obviously small, but then tried to work with local fishermen because specifically in that area, it's in Punta Cana, they had an issue with overfishing to where it was just unsustainable, and it was really shifting the balance of those reef ecosystems and causing coral decline. And so what they sought to do was to first connect with the local fishermen and say, we realize how important these resources are to you, both for livelihood and food security, but it's not sustainable. So what they did is they made an investment to actually compensate the local fishermen to be coral gardeners and restoration practitioners, so that then it obviously reduced that pressure, that fishing pressure, but then turned it into part of the solution. And so from there, they were able to garner a lot of public support because people realize, hey, fishermen are those who maybe have the most at stake in terms of our reef resources and their decline. And if they're now part of that stewardship, it's really powerful. So I think that that's maybe the largest responsibility of coral reef conservationists, scientists, anyone in between, is that we need to really stress that coral reefs and their value isn't just aesthetic. It's actually economic, and that our livelihoods, our coastal protection, our food, job security, health in terms of medicine are all tied to coral reefs. And so that will really help a local community try and invest in a restoration program. So I'll try to make sure to provide my email here so that I can provide some additional resources on that specific example, because that framework has been used in other areas to try and get small local communities who don't have a wealth of resources to at least start and then hopefully get some momentum so that it becomes sustainable.
Awesome. Thanks, Dalton. Keene, did you have something to add? I know we're going to try to fit in a lot of questions, so you don't have to.
No, I think Dalton's probably best suited to, answer that one.
All right. Well, then in that case, we're going to move on to Yusuf. Yusuf, you want to unmute and ask your question?
Hi, and first of all, thank you very much for this awesome and very informative meeting. And my question is about the name citizen science and really the marketing of citizen science, because I feel like at least in the US, the political atmosphere is such that things like citizen journalists or citizens who spend too much time on the internet to look up their symptoms and then go to their doctor, all of these citizen amateurs in these fields are getting a rather bad rap, and there seems to be an appetite for expertise and experts, and why can't we listen to experts? And I was wondering, has it affected advocacy around citizen science to grapple with that sense of amateurs versus experts?
So thanks for that question, Yusuf. That's a good question. That's a really good question. You broke up a little bit, but I think I got most of it. So one of the things that citizen science isn't the perfect panacea for everything, but it's and one of the criticisms has been the data quality in projects. And I think, that's a fair thing to say. Yeah, maybe the data isn't as good as a professional scientist might be able to get, but I think you have to look at the trade-off. So you could be a professional scientist who is like one person, and you're trying to go out and collect data. Well, it would be really difficult for you to go do that. But can I design a protocol that is going to collect enough data that's going to be good enough that I can use? And so to counter that criticism, the scientist who's helping develop the project really needs to think about the question that they're trying to answer and the protocols that they're implementing to collect the data. And then they need to implement ways to check that. So you start out with baby steps in a project and collect some data, look at it, see, hey, is this going to be good? Or what are the problems? is this too complicated for someone or not? And then you kind of build upon that. And that way you can build a robust data set that people can say, oh yeah, that actually is good. So there has to be some responsibility on the end of the project designers, whether they're the scientists or others that are doing this. They need to think about how they're going to do that. And so I think that's a little bit, that might be one of the differences with someone like a citizen doctor who's looking up things online and then going to the doctor. With a citizen science project, you're specifically or hopefully designing a protocol that's going to collect the data in a responsible and accurate way. And you have to think too about what's really suitable for citizen science. You know, you want things that can be collected over large geographic areas over long periods of time, that are going to be cost effective for you, like getting an army of people to do this. And the data is going to be, for the most part, good. And I tell students and people that, you know, even professional scientists make mistakes. They don't always collect the most perfect data sets. And so, you know, we're all human and make mistakes. So, but I think it's come a long way to kind of answer some of those questions. It's still a criticism of citizen science. But it's increasingly, I think they're showing as more and more projects yield their results that, hey, these are actually valid, good data sets that can be used. And so I think the voices for that kind of thing are quieting down a little bit, but I mean, they're still there. But and it's a good, I mean, you know, it's good to ask that. You know, it's good to kind of make citizen science accountable and say, hey, yeah, or, you know, is this going to be valuable? It's particularly important for policy stuff because the policymakers have to be really careful if they're going to be implementing laws based on data that's being collected. You know, is it really accurate, and can they use that to really implement something without getting thrown under the bus in a court of law? So, so I think that's a good question. And the other thing is the term citizen. Some people have an issue with that because that implies citizenship, and, you know, citizen of what, or citizen of who, or what, you know. So I'd never really thought about that before, but I had someone that mentioned that to me years ago, and I thought, well, yeah, I guess, you know. So you hear it called participatory science sometimes. But yeah, it's interesting about the citizen journalists and doctors. I hadn't thought about that, but that's, you're right. It's an issue for sure. So marketing, I say, yeah, marketing is you got to tout the fact that that if it done correctly, it can be very effective. You know, you have to think about, you have to put some thought into it. And in my class, I tell everyone, you know, they're building a project throughout the course of the semester, and you got to think about the protocols and the questions and how you might check that data and that kind of thing. So.
Yeah, and it's just amazing that brand building, you know, isn't just a business thing. It's really a science thing as well. And I know Stephanie's actually working with us on that. All right, we're gonna get to our last question, and then I have like a brief slideshow to kind of wrap everything up. Gene, would you like to unmute to ask your question?
Yeah, hi guys. I'm one of those avid scuba divers who is not a scientist and works in a completely unrelated field, but I live here in South Florida, and I've participated in a few of the programs, citizen science programs here and in the Keys. And I was just curious, and maybe Dalton, you can talk a little bit about your own experience, but how hard is it to get funding and raise money for citizen science programs? Is it a priority for the university? Is it you know, is it a challenge? Do you have to go back to the you know, back to the well every year? And how do you maintain and grow the funding for programs like yours? Thanks.
Yeah, it's a great question. And year to year, I'd probably have a slightly different answer. But I would add that for our program, for, you know, Rescue A Reef and coral reef restoration, I think we're a little spoiled compared to some other citizen science programs, because ours is very, you know, engaging and you know, immersive, where we're actually, you know, on coral reefs planting threatened species, and you know, you see the marine life kind of come. So we have had a lot of success with funding. In fact, having a citizen science and education program built into our lab has really helped with being more competitive on grant applications, as well as, you know, sponsorships. and grassroots donors. People believe in our mission, whether that's from participating or seeing it. And so it garners a lot of support because like I said, it's a really powerful platform and a wonderful vehicle for driving research, conservation, and social change. And so we've been creative, whether that's looking at how to drive for specific projects or come up with sponsorships from local private groups or stakeholders. We've worked with large corporations before because they realize the value of coral reefs isn't just specific to ocean lovers. It really is a driving economic source for communities. And like I mentioned, when it comes to traditional grants, we're seeing more and more of these proposals calling for some incorporation of public outreach and engagement. And so a citizen science program is really great in that respect because you're working with your local community, you're raising awareness, increasing scientific literacy, and then in many cases you're providing experiential learning, an opportunity to actually work in that field. So like I mentioned, I think we're somewhat unique to that question because coral restoration is such a great way to get citizen scientists involved. So I would actually like if Keene's comfortable to comment as well, because he probably has a broader perspective on that topic.
Yeah, I think, yeah, I'm just trying to think here how to wrap that up. I think, just trying to think here of, yeah, I don't know. I think you said it pretty well, Dalton. I don't know.
Fair enough. Well, I'm glad.
Yeah, I think that's good.
You guys have been going nonstop for an hour here, so I at some point, we don't run off the rails. But yeah,
well, I mean, I think, I'll just say one quick thing about it. I guess is that citizen science now is getting a popular mainstream, and so and the federal government recognizes it now, and so it's a growing field, and so it's got a lot of opportunities. So it is a little bit easier, I think, to get funding for this, and like NSF projects want to include greater impacts into these projects. So that usually means some sort of media project, but that could also be citizen science. And so now I think I would say 4 or 5 years ago, it would have been more difficult, but now people know about it. They're aware of citizen science, and these agencies and funders are looking to do that because they realize it's an important platform and it's powerful and relatively, easy to implement in some cases. So it's a lot of bang for your buck. So they're eager to kind of be open to funding it.
Yeah, we've received federal funding, state funding, and private funding, all for various parts of our citizen science and coral restoration program. So it just goes to show that a lot of different levels are really interested in citizen science and the value that it brings. So again, it's just another reason to give it a try if you're interested in being a citizen scientist, or potentially build out a program if you're a researcher who feels like you'd like to drive greater impact.
Yeah. And Bobby, I saw about your NSF question. Yeah, they definitely fund things. The SciStarter that we've talked about, scistarter.org, they were funded through NSF. That whole thing was funded through NSF. It started as a master's project, and they kind of built the first website. Darlene Cavalier did, and then she wanted to take it to the next level, and she got an NSF grant that built out that whole thing. And yeah, National Science Foundation is definitely on board with citizen science and are funding more and more projects with it.
Wow. Well, listen, guys, I wish we had time for more questions. We've actually filled our time and then some, and I still have a small thing to share to wrap everything up. But I first off just want to thank you both. That was an awesome panel, and we had a great turnout today. Really, really thrilled to have some new faces and a lot of great questions. I'm going to share some links in the chat, and I'll present a slideshow in a sec to kind of connect the dots. But just these panels are why we do what we do, right? It's so amazing, number one, to learn really in depth about these opportunities, but more importantly, know that they're accessible to you. That these are not, I know Dalton already shared his email, and Keene, if you don't mind, you can share yours as well.
Sure.
Pressure though. But the whole idea is that you're not only learning about these awesome initiatives, but more importantly, having access to the experts who are doing this great work. And so with that, I'm going to do a little quick wrap up on the seaworthy side of things, and then we'll let you guys go. Can everyone see my screen? Awesome. So a couple quick friendly reminders, and the links are already in the chat. We're in the running for a 20,000 euro prize through Boot Dusseldorf, and the last day to vote is tomorrow. So if you can please, it takes like 2 minutes, not even, click that link and give us a vote. That would help greatly. Additionally, today is Give Miami Day, and we are a nonprofit 501c3 under the Abundant Earth Foundation as a fiscal sponsor, and we just got our tax-deductible donations set up, for this and Giving Day. So if you want to support what we're doing, the link to donate is there as well. Furthermore, Julie, who's on our team, set up a survey, and we have awesome stickers that we give out at random to survey people who participate in it. So please fill that out. And we also have a Slack group. So if you want to keep things going, especially as this was our last panel for the year, and you want to keep engaged with our community, please join our Slack group. It's been getting more active by the week. And then I just wanted to do a quick year in review since this is our last panel. It's been it's crazy to think we only launched 2 months ago with our first panel, and we've now had 5 events. But beyond that, built up our network to over 25 different mentors and collaborators, and became fiscally sponsored and officially incorporated underneath the Abundant Earth Foundation as a 501c3, winning our first grant with ROVs, but most importantly, building this community of sea change makers, which is you guys, and our team of now 12 different volunteers in the program. And we're thrilled to have everyone involved, and couldn't be prouder of everything we've done. And that leads to a lot to look forward to. First of all, I get really excited about little things. We just designed our shirts, which are going to be a fundraiser for Giving Tuesday. And I'm no fashion designer, but I am pretty proud of my work on this one. So if you're interested in those, be on the lookout. Make sure you're following our social media, which is on the next slide. We'll be putting those out for a fundraiser shortly. And then more importantly, looking ahead for what's actually coming down the pipeline in 2021 and how we basically build off the foundation that we've built here this fall. We're starting with a call for ideas, or ideas for sea change, which is what these events are based on, right? Getting these solutions out there, and getting your solutions out there. We're going to have a pitch competition later in the spring. So basically, it's a kind of open call for ideas, and if we think your idea is good enough, we'll invite you to compete. And then that leads into our incubator program, which is going to be a formal program. We're working together with the local architect of an incubator here at Florida International University to help build our program, and it should be ready for launch by the summer. So we're really excited about all those things. Also looking at bringing in sponsors and investing partners to help support these startups and grow these startups. And of course, we're going to continue to have more events like this. And then finally, I want to give one more thank you to Keene and Dalton. This was one of my favorite panels yet, for sure, and close to home, quite figuratively and literally. We do have one more event. This one's going to be in person, socially distant, outdoors. There's a beach cleanup that is being hosted by our collaborator, Clean This Beach Up, which is a very punny and great name. And that is on Saturday morning in Brickell, and I will do my best to be there, even though I'm not good at waking up early on Saturdays. I also just wanted to thank my team for Seaworthy, who have done an amazing job of promoting throughout the fall and just getting everything out there. Our social media is down here in the bottom right, and if you have any questions for me or our team, you can email us at info@seaworthycollective.com. But otherwise, that is all I have for you guys. Thank you all so much. And if you have any follow-up questions, you can email us. You can email Dalton or Keene directly, and we'll be letting you know what's in the pipeline soon.
Thank you.
And shout out to Rescue A Reef for officially becoming a collaborator with us as well. We're thrilled to have y'all.
We're excited to be on board. Thank you all again for tuning in. It was a pleasure.
Yes, thank you all. Thanks a lot. Really appreciate it. Thanks for inviting me to be here, and good to see everyone. Thank you.